Namaste. In this lecture, we move from the general idea of sustainability to a more practical framework. We will focus on the three pillars in practice: environmental, social, and economic sustainability. The aim is to understand not only what these pillars are, but also how they can help us think more clearly about real decisions and real development choices. Let us begin with a quick roadmap. We will briefly recall the idea of sustainability from the earlier lecture. We will then define the three pillars and examine each one in practice. After that, we will look at interactions, trade-offs, and synergies among them. We will also place biodiversity within all three pillars and finally end with some applied lessons for sustainability thinking. From week 1, we should remember that sustainability is not anti-development. It does not tell us to stop using resources or stop improving human well-being. Instead, it asks us to pursue development within ecological limits. Present needs matter, but future generations also matter. A sustainable approach must therefore hold needs and limits together. If we forget either side, our analysis becomes incomplete. To build on that idea, we use the three-pillar model because it makes sustainability easier to understand. The image on this slide is useful because it shows sustainability like a structure standing on three supports. If any of these support weakens, the whole structure becomes unstable. The model reminds us that development has multiple dimensions. It prevents narrow thinking, where we focus only on money, or only on ecology, or only on immediate social benefit. It is helpful both as a teaching model as well as a planning model. The three pillars are environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. All three matter and all three interact. This means that a project cannot be called sustainable simply because it earns money, or because it protects nature in one narrow way, or because it appears socially useful in the short term. We need to ask how it performs across all the three pillars together. Here, we should make an important clarification. The pillars are not isolated boxes. In practice, they overlap continuously. A decision about land, water, forests, roads, energy, housing, or tourism usually affects ecosystems, people, and economies at the same time. Good sustainability analysis, therefore, does not stop at separate categories. It looks at the connections among them. Let us now begin with the environmental pillar. Environmental sustainability means protecting ecological processes, conserving biodiversity and natural resources, maintaining air, water, and soil quality, and preserving ecosystem resilience. The natural scene shown on the slide helps us remember that sustainability is not only about visible resources. It is also about the living systems and processes that keep landscapes functional over time. In practice, environmental sustainability is seen through ecosystem services: air and water quality, resource renewal, climate regulation, and biodiversity integrity. These are not abstract ideas. Clean water supports life and health. Healthy soils support agriculture. Vegetation influences climate and local temperatures. Biodiversity integrity means that living communities remain sufficiently intact to keep these functions operating. And when these systems weaken, environmental sustainability weakens with them. So this is the important point. When any of these systems weaken, environmental sustainability also weakens. So what questions does this pillar ask? It asks whether ecosystems are functioning, whether resources are being overused, whether biodiversity is being maintained, whether ecological damage is reversible, and whether ecological thresholds are being crossed. These are powerful questions because environmental harm is not always immediate or obvious. A system can appear usable for some time while hidden damage continues to build underneath. And this brings us to time. Short term gains can hide long term ecological loss. Degradation may accumulate slowly, and a recovery may be costly or sometimes even impossible. The clock image on the slide supports this idea of delayed consequence. Environmental sustainability is therefore about persistence. We are not asking only whether something works today. We are asking whether it can continue without eroding the ecological base on which future life and development depend. Biodiversity matters deeply within this pillar because it supports ecosystem function, contributes to resilience under stress, and helps maintain ecological processes. A system with richer biological diversity often has greater capacity to absorb disturbance and continue functioning. We should not think of biodiversity as just a list of species. It is part of the working structure of ecosystems. Without it, environmental sustainability becomes weaker, less stable, and more vulnerable to shocks. Now let us move to the social pillar. Social sustainability includes equity and justice, health and safety, participation in decision making, and community resilience and inclusion. This means sustainability is not only about managing nature well, it is also about whether people, especially the poorest, live fairly, safely, and with dignity within the development process. A society cannot be called sustainable if benefits are concentrated while burdens are pushed onto others. In practice, social sustainability appears through environmental justice, community well being, health and resource access, participation in decisions, and inclusion linked to long term stability. These elements matter because development decisions are always lived by real communities. It is not enough to claim that a project is useful in aggregate. We need to ask how it affects daily life, public health, access to resources, and the ability of people to shape the decisions that affect them. So, this pillar asks a different set of questions. Who benefits from development? Who pays the environmental cost? Are health and well being protected? Are people included in decisions? Are vulnerable groups disproportionately affected? These questions push us beyond averages. A project may look successful on paper, but if the gains go to one group while the costs fall on another, then social sustainability is clearly in doubt. We should also avoid reducing social sustainability to welfare alone. It includes fairness, not only comfort. It includes participation, not only compensation. It includes resilience, not only immediate benefit. And it includes dignity, it includes voice. This is important because money or short term support does not automatically solve a social harm. If people are excluded, displaced, silenced, or made more vulnerable, then the problem is deeper than simple welfare measurement can capture. Now we can connect biodiversity to the social pillar. Biodiversity supports health and livelihoods in many direct and indirect ways. It can provide food, medicine, fuel, water security, and ecological conditions that support agriculture and fishing. It can also support cultural identity and a sense of place through folklore, traditional knowledge, and sacred relationships with landscapes and species. In many regions, vulnerable communities depend most directly on local ecosystems. And that is why biodiversity loss often affects them first and most severely. Social sustainability can therefore depend on ecological integrity and biodiversity. They are very closely intertwined together. We now turn to the third pillar, economic sustainability. This pillar is about maintaining long term productive capacity, efficient use of resources, stability rather than only short term gain, and recognition of environmental costs. The image on this slide suggests imbalance and instability, which is a useful warning. An economy may appear active and profitable in the short run, but if it destroys the natural basis of production, then it is not economically sustainable in the long run. In practice, economic sustainability includes long term productivity, natural capital accounting, the cost of degradation, risk reduction through ecological stability, and resilience beyond the short term output. Natural capital accounting means recognizing that nature is not free in any real sense. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Soils, forests, water systems, wetlands, and biodiversity contribute real value to production and to human welfare. If we ignore that contribution, our economic judgments become incomplete and misleading. So, what questions does this pillar ask? It asks whether resource use is efficient and durable. It asks whether hidden ecological costs are being ignored. It asks whether benefits can continue over time. It asks whether long term resilience is being protected and whether future risks are being reduced or they are being increased. In other words, economic sustainability is not simply about current returns. It is about whether the system can continue producing value without undermining itself. And this is why economic sustainability is not equal to short term profit. Profit today may create loss tomorrow. Degradation can weaken future productivity, and hidden costs are still real costs, even when they do not appear immediately in a market price. For example, polluted water, depleted soils, or biodiversity loss may reduce future livelihoods, increase disaster risk, or require expensive restoration. Long term durability is the real test. Biodiversity is also central to the economic pillar. It supports ecosystem services, and those services support productive capacity and livelihoods. Agriculture, fisheries, forestry, tourism, and even urban life depend on functioning ecosystems. Ecological simplification may sometimes raise output briefly, but it can also increase long term risk by making systems more fragile. Biodiversity loss therefore becomes an economic issue, not only an environmental one. At this stage, we can bring the three pillars together again. Ecological damage creates social costs. Social exclusion, on the other hand, can undermine conservation. Economic choices can support or they can weaken ecosystems. The tool image here returns here to reinforce the same idea. Sustainability requires an integrated thinking. If we separate the pillars too sharply, we miss how one kind of problem produces another. In real life, trade offs are common. Some projects create real benefits and real harms all at the same time. So there is a trade off. Not all sustainability problems have easy answers. And that is why the pillar analysis becomes useful. It helps reveal the full picture instead of hiding complexity behind slogans. Good decisions require accounting, comparison, and judgment. We need to identify what is gained, what is lost, and who experiences each outcome of gain or loss. At the same time, sustainability is not only about conflict and sacrifice. Synergies are also possible. Some actions support all three pillars together. Better design can reduce conflict, and ecological planning can improve social and economic outcomes. For example, restoring urban tree cover can improve air quality, public comfort, and local livability all at the same time, while reducing the cost of cooling and air conditioning. So, sustainability thinking should look not only for trade offs but also for better design options. Let us consider a dam project. Economically, it may provide energy, irrigation, and infrastructure. Socially, however, it may create displacement of local communities, unequal distribution of benefits, and conflicts over land and water. Environmentally, it may alter river flow, affect sediment movement, fragment habitats, and reduce biodiversity. The image of the dam helps us see the scale of intervention that is involved. The key lesson is that all three pillars must be assessed together. A decision cannot be justified only by the electricity it produces. Now consider urban green spaces. This is a useful case of possible synergy. Environmentally, they support cooling, biodiversity, and better air quality. Socially, they offer recreation, public space, mental relief, and health benefits. Economically, they can improve livability and reduce heat related costs. The shaded path in the image helps us imagine how green design changes urban experience. This example shows that sustainable planning can produce multiple gains at once when ecological thinking is included early in the process. Wetland conversion gives us a different lesson. There may be an economic temptation to reclaim land for development, but the social risks can include increased flooding and declining water quality. The environmental loss includes habitat destruction and the weakening of regulation functions such as water storage and filtration. The calm wetland scene on this slide may look unused at the first glance, but that is exactly the mistake sustainability analysis helps us to avoid. What seems like an empty land may actually be performing vital functions. Short-term gain may therefore create long-term cost, and we must be extremely worried about them. Tourism development is another useful example. Economic opportunities can certainly be real, but social benefits depend on inclusion and fairness. Who gets the jobs, income, and decision making power matters greatly. At the same time, environmental pressure can rise quickly through waste, habitat disturbance, crowding, and overuse of local resources. The image of a tourism setting reminds us that even attractive and beneficial sectors need limits, governance, and ecological understanding. Tourism is sustainable only when growth remains within social and environmental capacity. And this brings us to an important conceptual question. Is every pillar equally foundational? The three pillar model is useful, but society and economy ultimately depend on the environment. Ecological integrity underlies the other two, so that is more fundamental. That does not make social and economic concerns unimportant. Rather, it means that they rest on a deeper base. If environmental systems collapse, both social stability and economic activity are threatened. Now let us consider this carefully. Society depends on water, food, and healthy environments. Economy, at the same time, depends on materials, energy, and ecosystem services. And so, if ecological systems are severely damaged, both society and economy weaken with them. So, the environmental pillar is foundational not because it replaces the other two, but because it supports them. Foundations matter more than labels. A well designed framework should therefore recognize dependence and not just balance. We can now locate biodiversity within the full model. Environmentally, biodiversity helps maintain ecosystem function. Socially, it supports health, livelihood, and cultural life. Economically, it supports ecosystem services and productive activity. The important point is that biodiversity does not sit outside the pillars as an optional extra. It belongs inside all three. When biodiversity is ignored, the whole sustainability framework becomes weaker. A practical lesson follows from all this. We should avoid single objective planning. We should actively look for trade offs and synergies. We should account for long term ecological effects. And we should widen our frame before deciding. Many poor decisions occur because the frame is too narrow. The purpose of sustainability thinking is to widen that frame so that hidden costs, indirect effects, and future risks become visible. If we want to think like sustainability analysts, we should ask a few disciplined questions. What does each pillar gain? What does each pillar lose? What happens in the long term? Where does biodiversity fit in? Do alternatives exist? These questions are simple, but they are also powerful. They prevent rushed thinking. When you revise this topic, try applying these questions to any real project you know, such as a road, a factory, a tourism site, or an urban expansion plan. There are also some common mistakes to avoid. We should not reduce sustainability to one pillar. We should not treat the pillars as isolated. We should not equate economic sustainability with profit alone. And we should not treat biodiversity as a side issue. Each of these mistakes leads to incomplete analysis. In real policy work, incomplete analysis often produces weak conclusions. The key terms from today are environmental sustainability, social sustainability, economic sustainability, trade offs, synergies, the foundational environmental pillar, and biodiversity across the pillars. These are working concepts that help us interpret real-world situations in a structured manner. For revision, you should be able to do 4 things. First, define the central meaning and scope of the 3 pillars in practice. Second, distinguish this topic from related misconceptions, especially the idea that one pillar alone is enough. Third, explain the main mechanisms, patterns, and consequences discussed today. And fourth, apply the framework to biodiversity conservation, sustainability planning, and real-world decision making. If you can do these 4 tasks, your understanding is on the right track. For reflection, consider how the 3 pillars help us understand a real sustainability challenge. You might choose a dam, a mining project, urban expansion, coastal tourism, or wetland conversion. Then ask what each pillar gains, what each pillar loses, who is affected, and what happens over time. A strong answer will not stay at the level of opinion. It will show a balanced reasoning, include biodiversity where it is relevant, and look for both trade-offs and possible synergies. And that is all for today. Thank you for your attention. Jai Hind.